Hey there, math rock stars. Let's take a look at some notes on parallel lines, parallel planes, and skew lines. So parallel lines, those are informally two lines that we say will never cross each other. In the diagram here, you'll see some notation that means parallel. That little triangle, that little arrow means parallel. So that means parallel. You could also, instead of that little triangle, you could just have arrows that look like this. So there's a set of arrows here that also mean those two lines are parallel to each other. And we're going to say that parallel means that two lines are not going to cross each other. There are geometries, by the way, where parallel lines can be defined as two lines that cross each other, and you may be thinking, that's just weird. If you're curious, take a look at a globe the next time you see one in your travels. The globe has a set of lines that are considered to be parallel to each other, but they actually cross each other. Leave a note in the comment section below if you can tell me what those lines are called. So lines on a globe that are considered to be parallel to each other, but they actually cross. Kind of interesting. All right, meanwhile, back to our notes here. We're going to think about parallel lines, however, not on a globe, but on a flat surface, so on a plane instead. So two or more coplanar. So remember before that coplanar just meant on the same plane, on the same plane. So two or more coplanar lines that do not cross each other, do not intersect. That's what we're going to say. Two parallel lines are two or more parallel lines are two or more lines that are on the same plane and they don't cross each other. Arrows are used to indicate that the lines are parallel. And there's some symbol notation as well. So this here is line AB, line AB. And you'll remember from our last unit, we indicate that that's a line showing two points, and then the line with two arrows at the end. And then line CD, so here's line CD. And we're going to show that they're parallel to each other by writing two parallel lines in between. Looks a little bit like absolute value, right? But they're kind of squished together. So that symbol right there means parallel. Symbol. By the way, I'll just put a little note here on the side. That upside down T, that's the symbol for, yes, you're right, perpendicular. Perpendicular. You can kind of see it over there on the edge. So parallel, perpendicular. We'll be revisiting perpendicular here eventually, but not today. All right, so we can talk about two parallel lines here. We can also talk about parallel planes. So if you imagine two sheets of paper, one on top of the other or one over the other, but they're not ever crossing each other. Or you could think about the ceiling and then the floor of a room. They never really intersect each other, do they? They just, one's above and one's below. So we could say that planes, and once again it could be two or more, planes that do not intersect each other are parallel planes, and we can use the same symbolic notation that we used before with the lines. Plane, so here's plane J, and then here's plane K, parallel to plane K. And then we come here to skew lines. So skew lines, that's interesting. If you imagine that this was a part of a table, right, and maybe T to P might be one of the legs, and U to Q might be another leg, and then V to R might be another leg, and W to S in the back might be a fourth leg. And then the plane here, I'm going to shade it in. TW, VU would be like the top part, right, of the table. Well, if I took one of those legs, so TP, and I'm going to extend it out here and make it a line. So pretend it keeps going forever, T to P. And then maybe I'm going to pick another line over here, maybe the line Q to R. If those two lines kept going in real space, right? In real space. So here's one corner of the table, and down here is kind of on the bottom. If I extended those lines out forever, they would not intersect. But we don't really call them parallel because they're not coplanar, right? Those two lines are not on the same plane. So non-coplanar lines is what we're considering right now. Two lines not on the same plane, but they're also not going to intersect each other, right? So they also don't intersect, do not intersect. We call those skew lines. They're not parallel, they're not on the same plane, they're on different planes, but they're also not, intersecting each other. Skew has another meaning, an English meaning. If something is skewed, right, it's kind of leaning towards one side or the other, a skewed perspective, for example. In geometry, it means this, though, two lines that aren't on the same plane, but they don't intersect each other. So a couple of examples. The two that we had already identified, PT, line PT, and line QR. Those are examples of skew lines. Here's another example. How about T to W? So find T to W, there it is, right? And V to R. Here's another example. How about P to T? And here I'm going to talk about it as a line segment, just the edge of that box. P to T, so where's P to T? P to T, that's that line segment we looked at before, right? P to T, and what about W to V? Those are skew. Here's some non-examples. So two lines on my figure that are not skew. WT and UV. So those two are actually, so here's T to W and here's U to V. Those two are parallel to each other, and you can't be parallel and skew. Those two lines, W to T and U to V, are not parallel or not skew because, look, they're on the same plane. And you have to be non-coplanar and not intersecting. Here's another example. What about T to W, name it, go in the other direction, and T to U? T to W and T to U. Well, here's T to W again, but T to U goes like this across the front of the box. Those two line segments intersect each other. So they're not only on the same plane, but they also intersect each other. So there's some non-examples. So I am going to stop this video and suggest that you try some of the examples below, and then you can check your answers with mine in the next one. You could also just take a picture and send it to me, and I will check them for you. All right, see you soon.